May I now request the President of the India Energy Forum, Dr. Shri R.V. Shahi, who was former Secretary in the Ministry of Power, a very dynamic person under whose leadership the India Energy Forum is providing a platform for discussion on all the energy areas and continuously interacting with the industry and the policy makers. May I request Shahi Saab to kindly deliver his presidential address.
Thank you, Mr. Mahajan. Honorable Chief Guest of today's event, Dr. Mahanti, Dr. Grover, my good friend, others are also good friends, Gurdeep Singh Ji, the Secretary of the Forum, Mr. Popli, and of course, Mr. Mahajan is the convener of this vertical. We have various verticals under the India Energy Forum, and this vertical takes care of the nuclear energy. We heard a very extensive and very comprehensive presentation by Dr. Grover. He is our main strength on this side, but as rightly stated by Mr. Mahajan, he has tried to integrate with the nuclear energy various other aspects like hydrogen, like energy transition, and that is how we are looking at things in a holistic manner in the India Energy Forum. It's not the usual one that if it is a coal seminar, coal is the only solution. If it is a solar seminar, solar is the only solution. No. Unless we have a very integrated approach, holistic approach, a harmoniously integrated arrangement, I think we won't be able to tackle the issues of providing access to energy in India, having a sustainable system of environmental safeguards, at the same time, the third dimension of energy security. So energy security, environmental sustainability, and more importantly, providing more and more, because we are nowhere in the list of developed and even developing countries insofar as per capita consumption of energy, per capita consumption of power is concerned. This issue of nuclear power and its role in the overall energy management of India, India Energy Forum has had a number of discussions. In fact, largest number of discussions we have had in the last 2.5 years on this issue, trying to provide some thinking, trying to provide some institutional changes that may be required, questioning why our growth rate has been low insofar as capacity addition is concerned, questioning why should nuclear power, which is such a benign source of energy, carbon-free energy, it still continues to be in the margin. That is the phrase we have used more often. Why should it continue in the margin of providing only about 2.5% to 3% of power and less than 2% in terms of capacity? And therefore, why is it that in spite of its beginning way back in 60s, imagine in 60s it was felt that nuclear power in India would be a good source of providing power, providing energy. And the Atomic Energy Act is as old as that. Subsequently, Nuclear Power Corporation was set up in mid-80s. A Nuclear Power Corporation has done a great job. We should be proud of our scientists and engineers. I often say that India has proved that it can do it, that it can run its nuclear reactors, its nuclear power plants so safely, so reliably. When I joined the ministry in 2002, we used to interact very extensively because power ministry becomes the nodal ministry for power. with Dr. Kakodkar, and at that time we had issue of fuel. Now the fuel issue is also behind us after our nuclear supply agreement in 2006 or so. So therefore, when the fuel, which was an issue, and as I said, we were struggling on how we should have our plant load factor in nuclear plants higher unless we get sufficient fuel. Now that problem is I understand, adequately addressed. So therefore, we have to discuss why this important source of energy should not have a much higher rate of, how else we will provide more. If we continue at 2 to 3%, then obviously it doesn't make it is not even critical mass. Though such a nice and excellent track record of performance, and therefore it can be relied upon. Our scientists and engineers in this nuclear field can do it. What is standing in the way? That is the issue. What is standing in the way, to my mind, is the same as it stood in the way of airlines, as it stood in the way of energy itself, in the power, which it stood in the way of various other telecommunication. And it was recognized that unless in any field of industry, though nuclear power is somewhat different, maybe significantly different from the point of view of security, from the point of view of safety, but at the same time, it has also to be run as an industry, as a business, as a corporate. What is standing in the way? It stood in the way of telecommunication. Policymakers felt that it is time that it should be opened up. It stood in the way of energy, power. We didn't depend only on one NTPC. A minor change was made in 75, 76. NTPC and NHPC were created. Around 2000, we thought that's not enough. India is reeling under a shortage of power, and therefore we abandoned the Electricity Act of 2010, Electricity Supply Act of 1948, and that was 1935. And a new act in 2003 was enacted. And that opened up the sector to a manner that we had less than 1 lakh megawatt when we entered this century. Today we have 4 lakh 25 or 28,000 megawatt of power. That means more than 300,000 megawatt has been added in last 20 years. So I think there are examples of institutional changes, legislative changes, policy changes. These are important things. We all are players, we all are actors, we all are engineers, scientists, we can do. But framework of how we do has to be determined by policy formulation, by legislative formulation. I must say, and I must thank our earlier policy makers, that as I mentioned, and let me repeat, it was recognized that nuclear power is a source of energy, and 60 we had the act in 60s. So therefore now we have to see how we expedite. I have been thinking about this, so I don't want to repeat all that I have earlier mentioned and also written in some of my pieces, but I was thinking what could be the blueprint for next few years for the nuclear power, an action-oriented blueprint. And my first point is that Nuclear Power Corporation, which has done a very good job, must be strengthened. Must be strengthened in terms of its ability, an enormous ability to access capital market. So long as Nuclear Power Corporation continues to depend on the budgetary support of the government, it will continue to have not an exponential growth, but a growth, but not very good growth. So therefore, there is no reason why it should not access the capital market because it is doing so well. Still under government control, serious control, but then access the capital market and supplementary support from the government should continue. Nuclear Power Corporation can have a long-term plan, and that plan should be significantly different from what has been happening in the past, and it should have some 15-year, 20-year plan, because we were discussing whatever there is a pipeline, even in next 10, 15 years, we are not going to be more than about 4 or 5% of energy, because by that time other sectors are also growing. How do we get out of this 4 or 5% to something near 7, 8, 10% of in terms of energy, if not in terms of capacity. So that is the first item that I should say. Second item was the accessing of capital market as soon as possible, because we had the problem even in power sector. NTPC is doing so well for years together, Navratna company, but we brought it on the capital market only in 2005. And it had been doing so well for last many, many years. And after that, there is no looking back. NTPC has never been starved of financial constraint. It can do much more. It can do in other areas as well. Then under the Act, it is provided. That is my third point. Under the Act, it is provided, and right from the very many years it has been provided, that government companies can do nuclear power plants. Why not expand it? We did some work on this during the seminar, outside the seminar, behind the scene. I think there is some thinking. NTPC came forward. They are trying to do a joint venture. But I think it should not be half-hearted. NTPC itself would be asked, and that may be my next point, that NTPC should itself be asked to prepare a 15-year program on how much of capacity it can add. Because for NTPC, the task is that for solar, thermal power cannot continue to be the backup. So therefore, nuclear power can be a good substitute. So NTPC has a role. NTPC has a challenge that can it continue like this on the shoulder of only thermal coal power, or it should also have this substitute as a good backup. My next point is that Nuclear Power Corporation, because there are concerns, can others do it? This is a big concern. Can others do it? Nuclear Power Corporation should set up a strong consultancy company. If NTPC comes, like NTPC, other strong public sector companies who are committed to do nuclear power, they can come. And then they will need support of engineering, they will need support of manufacturing, they will need support of operations. And therefore, Nuclear Power Corporation can, today, wherever you go, NTPC people are running the show, private sector. So therefore, this can become a mother unit to provide support. And therefore, the concern and the anxiety, can somebody else do nuclear power? Definitely they can do. Subsequently, if not immediately, we should have our open mind. We can open it for private sector as well. There is no reason that we should not open it for private sector. Maybe after we gain some experience with NTPC and such other public sector companies, even private, and that would require a legislative change. And according to me, time has come for that legislative change. So that is my next blueprint, that start thinking. We were thinking this, I may tell you, myself and Mr. Kakodkar, we drafted a small amendment to the Act to provide PPP in the nuclear power. But then at that time the issue was nuclear supply agreement and the whole thing was in the background. Fuel supply would be a big issue. I understand fuel would not be an issue from the availability point of view, but when we have other public sector companies, when we have private sector companies, then there will be a need for a fuel supply company. Independent, government control, strongly controlled, because nuclear fuel is nuclear. And therefore, it will require oversight and close monitoring of, against the principle laid down, supplying fuel to different organizations, not only nuclear power corporations. So that can be the next. There are great concerns whenever I talk to my friends, and I often talk to Dr. Grover, also Dr. Kakodkar. This concern of nuclear safety, environment, things like that, I think these are genuine problems. Nuclear power plant is not coal plant, it is not hydro plant. And therefore, make the regulatory mechanism from the safety and health point of view very strong. I'm not saying the present arrangement is not strong, but if we are going beyond Nuclear Power Corporation, we could make it stronger. And a sub-item of that can be that strong organization should have a setup in every plant, private sector plant as well as public sector plant, so that this oversight and this mechanism of ensuring and also addressing the concern of safety is adequately taken care of. Last but not the least, we should have a massive capacity building program when private sector, public sector, beyond nuclear power corporations. So I see the growth of nuclear power corporation. I am optimistic, very well, very nicely done under the nuclear power corporation. growth of nuclear capacity, nuclear power capacity. But I do see that much more is expected, much more is required, and therefore opening up gradually to public sector companies and then subsequently in not more than 5 years' time to PPP is the solution for a reasonable, respectable position away from nuclear being in the margin is a must. Thank you very much.